"Remember your place in this family," my sister-in-law said after slapping me in front of my children. I had spent 3 days preparing that anniversary dinner, yet my husband did not defend me or even look up. I set down my fork, slapped her once, and left with the kids. Why was he more frightened by my leaving than by what his sister had done? My sister-in-law slapped me at my dining table, on my 17th wedding anniversary, in front of my 2 children. The sound cracked through the room before the pain reached me. My left ear rang. My daughter's fork slipped from her hand and struck the china. My son stopped chewing. The roasted chicken was steaming. Rosemary and lemon hung in the air. The candles kept burning as if nothing had happened. Tori's hand remained raised between us. "Remember your place in this family." I did not look at her. I looked at my husband. For a second, I waited for Daniel to stand. He did not need a speech. He only needed to say that his sister had crossed a line, that she had struck his wife in our home, and that she needed to leave. He did not stand. He did not ask whether I was hurt. He did not look at the children. He lowered his eyes to the plate I had served him. Something in me went quiet. I set down my fork, slowly. Then I wiped my hands on the linen napkin I had ironed that morning because I wanted the evening to feel special. For 17 years, I had cooked, smoothed things over, and made rooms comfortable for people who never cared whether I was comfortable inside them. I was finished. I reached across the table and slapped Tori once, hard. Then I stopped. I turned to Daniel and said, "A man who watches his wife get hit in her own home has already chosen which family he belongs to." No one answered. I took my daughter's hand. I told my son to stand up. I picked up my keys and walked out without a suitcase or coat. I was wearing the navy dress I had bought for our anniversary. My daughter did not cry in the car. That frightened me more than tears would have. She sat beside her brother, staring at the road. After 20 minutes, my son asked, "Are we coming back tonight?" "Not tonight," I said. It was the only answer I could give without lying. My parents lived 40 minutes away. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She took one look at my face and pulled us inside. She photographed the red mark on my cheek. I wrote down the time. I saved the missed calls and took screenshots of every message. Then Daniel texted me, "My sister shouldn't have hit you, but you made everything worse. Bring the kids home and apologize before this becomes a custody issue." I read it twice. He had admitted she struck first, blamed me for reacting, threatened me with my children, and still protected her. Years later, I understood that I did not leave because Tori slapped me. I left because my daughter had looked at her father and waited too. She watched him choose silence. And I thought that slap was the moment my marriage broke. The truth was, it had been breaking for years, one small remark at a time, each quiet enough to make me wonder whether I was overreacting. Those remarks had started long before I knew enough to call them a pattern. When I met Daniel, we were both building our lives. He worked long hours at an architecture firm. I took whatever design jobs I could find. He made me laugh. He listened when I spoke. He seemed untouched by the expectations that came with my family's money. My parents were cautious. I defended him anyway. Back then, I believed choosing love over security made me brave. I never imagined I would spend years asking the man I had chosen to show the same courage for me. Daniel's family had its own order. Evelyn spoke softly, but everyone adjusted when she entered a room. Tori could arrive late, insult someone, or create a crisis, and the family would rush to protect her. Daniel called that keeping the peace. What it really meant was that the easiest person surrendered first. At our second Thanksgiving, I cooked most of the meal. Tori tasted the stuffing and said, "Some people tried very hard to belong in places they had not been raised to understand." Daniel changed the subject to football. At our son's christening, Evelyn stood beside me while I held the baby. She told me money could buy a beautiful nursery, but it could not buy manners. Her voice was gentle enough to sound like advice. I said nothing. Years later, Tori's catering business came up short before a family celebration. I paid the bill because vendors were waiting. She did not thank me. Instead, She joked that I had found a useful purpose for my family's money. Everyone laughed. I did too. That became my habit. I smiled, changed the subject, and told myself one cruel sentence was not worth ruining a holiday. The children needed grandparents. Daniel was caught in the middle. Marriage required compromise. I repeated those thoughts until they sounded like truth. The house should have told me otherwise. My parents helped with the down payment. My income covered most renovations, and during slow periods in Daniel's career, I paid the mortgage alone. Still, Evelyn and Tori moved through our rooms as if I were a guest in Mercer family property. Because I traveled for work, Daniel handled most daily banking. I called it teamwork. I never asked why he became tense whenever I offered to review the accounts. 1 week before our anniversary, he asked whether Evelyn and Tori could join us for dinner. He said his mother had been lonely. I knew the evening was supposed to belong to us. Still, I said yes. The relief on his face told me something I had avoided for years. He had not asked because his mother needed comfort. He had asked because he already knew I would be the easiest person in the room to persuade. The next morning, I understood that dinner had not begun with the slap. It had begun 3 days earlier, when I planned the menu, bought flowers, pressed the tablecloth, and made dessert for my son. I wanted the evening to feel warm, familiar. Evelyn arrived early and moved through the house slowly, studying each room as if she were inspecting property. Tori arrived late. She placed her purse beside the chair at the head of the table and sat down without asking. Daniel saw it. He said nothing. When dinner was ready, I served the children first. Tori watched me fill their plates. Then she watched me serve myself. She waited until I sat down. That was what stayed with me. The slap had not come from confusion or sudden anger. She had watched. She had decided. She wanted everyone to see what happened when I forgot her order. I barely slept. My son asked when he could return to his old room. I promised things would feel normal again, though I no longer knew what normal meant. My daughter sat beside me on the guest room bed. After a long silence, she asked, "Was I wrong for taking food before Grandma?" I turned toward her. "Why would you think that?" She told me Evelyn often said, "The women in this family know who gets served first." Sometimes Evelyn made her wait until her father had taken food. Once, she moved my daughter's hand away from the bread basket. She said a polite girl noticed everyone else's needs before her own. I felt something colder than anger. This had never been about manners. Women served and loud people were rewarded. Quiet people gave way. Children learned the rules before they could question them. I had believed I was protecting my children from a broken family. That morning, I realized my silence was teaching my daughter how to live inside one, while pretending everything was fine. Daniel kept calling. He said the children needed to come home. He said Tori would apologize if I apologized first. Then he warned that his attorney might become involved. I asked him one question. "When your sister hit me, why didn't you stand up?" "I froze," he said. "For 17 years?" He did not answer. That was enough. I would not return alone. I would communicate only in writing, and I would meet a family law attorney the next morning. I saved every message. Before I tell you what my attorney found, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. The next morning, I entered his office with a photograph of my cheek, a folder of messages, and one fear. 1 second of anger might cost me my children. He read Daniel's first text and looked up. "Do not delete anything. Your husband just confirmed that his sister hit you first." Martin did not praise me for slapping Tori back. He listened while I gave him the facts in order. The date, the time, who was at the table, who struck first, what Daniel did, where I took the children. Then I showed him the message threatening custody. He read it twice and folded his hands. Feeling justified and being legally protected are not the same thing. The words stung because they were true. Tori had hit me first. Daniel had admitted that in writing. But I had still hit her back, in front of my children, and he could use that moment to describe me as unstable. Martin told me what to do next. Keep the photograph with its timestamp, Write down everything while the details were fresh. Save the original texts and voice messages. Post nothing online. Do not contact Tori. Tell Daniel in writing that the children were safe. Allow reasonable phone calls and file for a temporary parenting schedule. He explained that family court rarely rewards the loudest person. Judges look for patterns, care records, steady behavior, consistent facts. So I went home and built a record. I gathered medical receipts, school emails, appointment calendars, activity schedules, and messages showing who arranged childcare when plans changed. I found work itineraries marked around parent conferences, dental visits, soccer games, and sick days. I was not trying to prove Daniel had never been a good father. That would not have been true. I was proving that I had been the children's primary caregiver, and that leaving the house had been an act of protection, not revenge. From then on, every conversation moved to email or a parenting app. Daniel could no longer call, deny what he had said, or let Evelyn and Tori speak for him. When he accused me of destroying the family, I answered once, "I am available to discuss the children. I will not discuss returning to the marriage outside counsel." 11 days after the dinner, Martin placed the divorce papers in front of me. My hand trembled as I signed. I still mourned the man I had once loved. I remembered the young architect who made me laugh in a coffee shop. But grief was not proof that leaving was wrong. It only proved that what I was leaving had once mattered. Because we owned a house, shared accounts, and earned separate incomes, Martin requested full financial disclosure: bank statements, credit cards, business records, loan files, transfer histories, property documents. Daniel reacted more strongly to that request than he had to the divorce itself. That was the first sign something else was hidden. The first statements showed small transfers with harmless labels, all leading back to an account tied to Tori's business. $400, $900, $1,200. When Martin's assistant totaled them, I read the number 3 times. $63,800. $63,800. The number sat on Martin's screen, as if it had nothing to do with my life. The transfers stretched across 4 years. Each one had been small enough to disappear among groceries, repairs, and school fees. They carried labels that sounded harmless: household services, event deposits, family reimbursement, vendor correction. Most appeared during months when my design firm had done well. Daniel knew when the account was full. He knew what amount would not catch my attention. He knew which words looked familiar enough that I would move past them. The money was not abstract. It was years of soccer fees and summer programs. It was a large piece of our mortgage. It was every late flight home after a client installation, and every Saturday I worked while the children stayed with a sitter. Money inside a marriage is not just money. It is time turned into numbers. Daniel had not only moved dollars from one account to another, he had moved away hours I could never get back. I could never recover that time. Through his attorney, he admitted making the transfers. He said I was helping my sister keep her business open. He called them loans. He said Tori planned to repay us. He insisted I earned enough that the household had never gone without. Then he said he hid the transfers because he knew I disliked her. I answered through Martin, "You kept her business alive by quietly draining ours." The records showed that Tori's catering company had not been stable for years. Our money had covered payroll shortages, kitchen rent, and overdue supplier bills. It allowed her to appear successful while someone else absorbed the cost. Evelyn had once supplied much of that support. As her retirement funds declined, Daniel became the replacement. That was when I understood part of Tori's contempt. She depended on money I earned, but she needed to treat me as inferior so she would never have to admit it. Greed does not always begin with need. Sometimes people take because they believe another person's resources are available to them. The Mercers had never viewed my income as something I had the right to control. They saw it as family money, and family meant their family. While reviewing the transfers, Martin's assistant noticed 3 charges unrelated to catering. One was for a notary service, another was a county recording fee, the third paid for a private mailbox. All 3 appeared 14 months earlier under the label property maintenance. I had never hired a notary. I had never changed the paperwork on our house. Martin asked me to search my email using our address and the county recorder's name. Buried in my junk folder was an unopened message. Property recording activity notice. The date matched the notary charge. Martin opened the attachment and turned the screen toward me. It transferred 10% of our house to Evelyn. At the bottom was my signature. I had never written it. The signature leaned slightly to the right, just as mine did. The first letter was almost exact. Whoever copied it had studied the version I used on contracts. But the lines joining my last name were too careful, and the pressure changed where my hand never did. That was what frightened me. The signature was close enough to fool someone who did not know me. Someone had watched long enough to learn how I wrote my own name. Martin explained that the county recorder did not examine every signature for fraud. The filing had been stopped for a simpler reason. The notary registration number did not match current state records, and the title company requested more verification. A property fraud alert had been sent to me. I never saw it because the message landed in my junk folder. I had nearly lost part of my home because one automated email looked like hundreds of others. 10% sounded small, until Martin explained what it could do. Evelyn would not need the whole house. A disputed share could delay a sale, complicate refinancing, require additional notice, and give her a reason to interfere with decisions that belonged to Daniel and me. This was not only an attempt to take property, it was an attempt to create leverage. Martin hired a document examiner and requested the original filing, notary journal, payment records, mailing information, and the history of changes to the property alerts. The preliminary findings came back slowly. The signature showed signs of copying. The notary had no record that I appeared in person. The seal had been used after the commission expired. The filing fees came from an account connected to Daniel's family. Through his attorney, Daniel denied knowing about the forged signature. He said Evelyn wanted security because she believed she had helped our family. He claimed she had only been exploring options. Part of me wanted to believe him. 17 years do not disappear because the truth becomes ugly. Some part of me still wanted the man I had loved to have a limit. Then Martin found the contact changes. The alerts had been redirected from my email to a shared address. The mailing address had been changed from our home to a private mailbox. The request used security answers tied to our joint banking profile. Only 2 people knew those answers: Daniel and me. Among the records was an incomplete email chain. The message body was missing, but the subject line and recipients remained. Once Mom is on the deed, Tori had sent it to Evelyn and Daniel 3 days before the false filing. Martin said we needed the full chain before making accusations. But the question was no longer whether my husband knew. It was how much he knew. I had left the dinner table because Daniel looked away. Staring at that subject line, I began to understand that maybe he had never looked away at all. Maybe he had been standing with them for years, pretending he was caught in the middle. The restored email chain answered the question I had been afraid to ask. Tori wrote that once Evelyn held 10% of the house, I could not sell or refinance without dealing with them. Evelyn replied that the house belonged to the family, not only to whoever earned the most. Then I reached Daniel's messages. He wrote that I rarely checked the property alert account and that he could change the mailing address back after the filing. Another email contained my signature from an old mortgage document. Daniel had written, "Use this one. It is the closest to how she signs formal documents." I remembered every time he said he did not want to be in the middle. Every time he asked me to let something go. People speak of neutrality as if it carries no weight. But when one person is harmed and another is protected, silence serves the person with power. Daniel had never stood in the middle. He had stood with them. Our attorneys arranged a meeting. Martin placed the emails, mailbox receipt, and property alert changes before Daniel. He said he only wanted Evelyn to feel secure as she grew older. I asked whether he knew they planned to sign my name. He waited too long. Finally, he said, "I knew Mom was handling the paperwork. I did not ask how." That was not innocence. It was a choice not to ask the question that might have forced him to stop them. "You did not fail to protect me," I said. You helped them get close enough that I needed protection from you." He did not deny it. That afternoon, the school called. Evelyn and Tori had arrived, claiming there was a family emergency. They wanted to take both children home. I had removed them from the approved pickup list, so the staff refused. Tori said I was using the children to punish the family and insisted Daniel had given permission. When a teacher walked my daughter through the hallway, Evelyn called after her. "Sweetheart, your mother is not thinking clearly right now. Tell the judge you want to come home." My daughter began to cry. The school documented everything and called security. Evelyn and Tori were ordered to leave. They had tried to make my daughter doubt the person protecting her. Some people do not need custody to control a child. They only need the child to question where safety lives. Martin filed an emergency request that day. Evelyn and Tori could not pick up the children or contact the school. Any changes required written agreement, and Daniel had to use the parenting app. He claimed he had not known they were going there. This time, those words meant nothing. If you are still listening, please rate your satisfaction with this story in the comments below. Your presence has encouraged me throughout this journey, and it means more than you know as I continue toward the final part. I thought the emails and the school incident had shown me the worst of that family. 2 days later, a woman I had never met called Martin's office. She had worked for Tori, and she still had records they believed were gone. The woman's name was Kayla. She had managed Tori's office for almost 3 years. She had left after going weeks without a paycheck. Before that, Tori had asked her to add hours for employees who had not worked, change invoices after clients had already paid, and use deposits from new events to cover bills from older ones. Kayla kept copies because she was afraid the business would collapse and Tori would blame her. She did not call herself brave. She told Martin, "I should have spoken sooner. I kept telling myself it was just one more invoice." I understood that kind of thinking. One more insult, one more transfer, one more holiday kept peaceful by the person who had already been hurt. Kayla brought original invoices beside the altered versions. She had timesheets listing workers who were not even in the building that day. There were emails adding rental charges for equipment the company never used, and spreadsheets showing money from our household account moving into Tori's business. The records covered my son's christening, Evelyn's milestone birthday, a charity event my company sponsored, and our annual office dinner. One message from Evelyn said, "Do not let Laura see the detailed copy." Then Martin opened an email between Tori and her mother. Tori had written, "She will not question the total. She would rather overpay than look cheap." Evelyn replied, "Then let her. Pride should be useful for something." I had believed generosity made me difficult to control, because I did not depend on them. I had been wrong. Generosity without oversight can become an invitation to people who already believe they are entitled to what you have. When someone knows you hate conflict, they can build your silence into the plan. Kayla admitted she had followed some of those instructions. She needed the job. She needed health insurance. Each time, she promised herself the next invoice would be the last. I could not judge her without judging the woman I had been. Martin explained that the documents could support our request for repayment. Some might also interest tax authorities or business investigators. They did not prove Evelyn forged my signature, but they showed a pattern of cooperation, concealment, and financial pressure. Then Kayla showed us one final spreadsheet. Our money had not been the only support keeping Tori's company alive. Evelyn had made several personal loans as well, but the amounts had fallen sharply over the last 2 years. Her retirement accounts were running down. The answer became clear. They needed another source of security. They needed my house. Until that moment, I had thought the forged deed was a desperate move. After my marriage began to fail, the final line in Kayla's spreadsheet showed otherwise. The house had been their backup plan long before I knew my marriage was in danger. By the time the temporary hearing arrived, I understood that a courtroom does not care who tells the loudest story. It cares who can support it. Daniel's attorney focused on the slap. He said, "I struck Tori in front of the children, removed them from the house, refused to return, and restricted their contact with Evelyn and Tori." He presented those facts as if nothing had happened before them. I did not deny what I had done. I told the court that I slapped Tori back. I said I was not proud that my children saw it, and that I should have left the table without touching her. Then Martin presented the photograph of my cheek, and Daniel's message admitting his sister had struck first. I explained that I left to end the confrontation. The room was quiet, except for papers turning. Under the table, I held my hands together until my fingers hurt. Martin submitted the school report, medical records, teacher emails, activity schedules, and messages showing that I arranged most appointments and daily care. He also showed that I continued allowing regular calls between Daniel and the children. We were not trying to prove he had never been a loving father. We were proving that I had been the steady parent. My daughter did not testify in open court. A family specialist spoke with her privately. The report said she feared being forced to choose between her parents. She also repeated Evelyn's rule that women in the family should know who gets served first. The specialist recommended that no adult discuss the case with either child. The temporary order kept the children primarily with me. Daniel received a regular parenting schedule. All communication remained in the parenting app. Evelyn and Tori could not pick the children up from school without written consent. Neither parent could criticize the other in front of them, and we both had to complete co-parenting instruction. It was not a dramatic victory. It was order. I once imagined justice as a moment when someone declared one person right and another wrong. And real justice was quieter. It looked like boundaries written on paper, who could pick up the children, who had to give notice, who could no longer enter our lives without permission. Martin reminded me that custody and money were separate matters. The $63,800 would be addressed in property division. The false deed had been referred to the proper authorities. After the hearing, the document examiner's final report arrived. The signature on the deed was not mine. The county prepared to void the filing, and the notary records moved into investigation. Daniel stopped asking whether I would come home. For the first time, he asked what it would take to end everything. He understood that the house, the money, and his silence all carried a price. Daniel agreed to negotiate after the document. Examiner confirmed the signature was not mine. The proposed settlement was careful, not dramatic. The false 10% transfer to Evelyn would be voided. Daniel would sign over his legal share of the house to me. That transfer would account for the $63,800 taken from our joint funds, the down payment my parents had provided, the renovations I had paid for, and part of the property division. In return, I would give up a claim to part of his retirement and professional assets. He would repay the remaining balance on a schedule. The parenting plan would stay separate from the money. That mattered to me. I did not want the children used as leverage. I wanted clear boundaries, a stable home, and a fair accounting of what had happened. Once the transfers stopped, Tori's business began to fail quickly. The kitchen rent fell behind. Suppliers demanded payment before delivery. Employees left. A few clients asked to review old invoices. The company did not collapse because I attacked it. It collapsed because it had never been standing on its own. Evelyn stopped contacting me directly. Every message came through an attorney. She described the deed as a family misunderstanding, but she could not explain why my signature sample appeared in the email chain. The investigation moved more slowly than the divorce. Martin warned me that it might take months, perhaps longer. For once, I did not need an immediate ending. The truth was already on record. Daniel asked to meet one last time in Martin's conference room. He looked tired. Older. "I should have chosen you," he said. "You did choose," I told him. "You just thought I would never make you live with that choice." He apologized for the dinner, for the money, for knowing his mother wanted her name on the deed, for letting the children become part of the fight. Then he said he had been afraid that standing against Evelyn and Tori would cost him his family. "So you kept them by spending me?" He lowered his eyes. I believed he was sorry. But regret and repair are not the same thing. People often think a sincere apology should lead to reconciliation. Sometimes an apology only allows two people to name the truth at the same time. Truth can close a relationship without being strong enough to save it. I was not refusing Daniel to punish him. I was accepting that love could not survive after trust had been used to reach my money, my home, and my silence. We signed the agreement. The final court date was set. That evening, my daughter sat beside me and asked the question no legal document could answer. If Dad hurt you, is he still our family? I did not answer my daughter right away. She sat close enough that her shoulder touched mine. Her question was simple, but there was no simple answer. Your father will always be your father, I said, but being family means more than sharing a name. It means behaving in a way that makes the people you love feel safe. I told her that someone could love his children and still make painful choices as a husband. Being a father did not make every decision right. Adults had to take responsibility if they wanted to rebuild trust. Most of all, she did not have to choose between us. The children adjusted slowly. My daughter still asked before taking food, even in my parents' kitchen. She watched faces before saying she had fun at my house, worried that enjoying one home might hurt someone in the other. My son kept asking when he could sleep in his old room again. When plans changed, he became angry over small things. Sometimes he stood too close to me when Daniel arrived, as if a 9-year-old boy needed to guard his mother. Daniel and I agreed that both children should speak with a family counselor. He followed the parenting schedule most weeks and he called when he promised and attended school events. But old habits did not disappear quickly. He sometimes asked to switch weekends because Evelyn needed help. Once, he took the children to see her without telling me. I reminded him through the parenting app that being their father did not give his mother permission to ignore our agreement. Over time, he stopped arguing. While the children learned a new rhythm, I began building one of my own. My firm accepted a project renovating a community center for older adults. We widened the walkways, softened the lighting, and added handrails that looked like part of the design instead of a warning. I wanted the building to support independence without making anyone feel diminished. The project received local attention and brought us more work. I used to think independence meant earning enough money to need no one. Later, I understood it differently. Real independence meant accepting help without surrendering control of my life. Tori's business closed. Former clients reviewed old invoices. Evelyn's investigation continued without a final result. Daniel began making payments under our agreement. Justice did not arrive all at once. It arrived in boundaries, records, and ordinary days that became peaceful again. When the divorce was finalized, I walked down the courthouse steps holding both children's hands. 2 years earlier, I had held those same hands while leaving a house filled with silence. This time, we were not running from anything. Ruth invited us to dinner the week after the divorce became final. The chairs did not match. The food came in bowls. No one had assigned seats, and no one treated the chair at the end as a place of power. Sophie laughed so hard she had to set down her glass. Somewhere between passing the vegetables and reaching for the chicken, I served myself first. I did not notice. Then I remembered another table. The pressed linen, the rosemary, the candles, the way Daniel lowered his eyes while my cheek burned. For a moment, the room went quiet, because I understood how much had changed. Near the end of dinner, one bread roll remained. Sophie reached for it, then pulled her hand back. Does anyone else want it? She looked around the table, waiting for permission to be hungry. Take it, sweetheart, I said. You do not have to apologize for being hungry. She picked up the roll. No one frowned. No one corrected her. No one watched to see whether she had forgotten her place. The house belonged to me after the settlement, but ownership was never the greatest victory. A home belongs to you when you do not fear a key turning in the door, when children do not study adult faces before speaking, when dinner is not a test of rank, when no one must serve others to earn respect. For a long time, I believed slapping Tori back was the moment I reclaimed my dignity. It was not. That was only the moment I stopped surrendering it. My dignity returned in quieter ways, saving a message, signing divorce papers with a shaking hand, telling the truth in court, keeping promises to my children, refusing to become cruel because others had been cruel to me. I did not win because Tori lost her business, Evelyn faced an investigation, or Daniel gave up his share of the house. I won because I no longer needed them to confirm my value. I protected my children without using them to punish their father. I built a family based on action, not blood alone. Family is not defined by who shares your name. It is defined by who protects your dignity when doing so costs them something. Sophie took a bite of bread. Ben started another story, and the whole table laughed. No one needed to remember their place. In a real family, everyone already has one. On a scale from 1 to 10, how satisfied were you with this story? And my decision to leave? Would you have walked away that night? Or given the marriage one more chance?